Trinidad and Tobago has received confirmation of its first case of COVID-19 or coronavirus.
The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Trinidad and Tobago now stands at 60.
This country has recorded a total of 65 new COVID-19 cases today.
Global stay-at-home measures have seen a rise in gender-based violence.
Could 2020 possibly get any worse?
Mask mandates and lockdowns, increasing cases, deaths, and unemployment. COVID-19 has proven to be a strain on the social, health, and economic spheres. While 2020 has brushed us all with hardship, one group remains especially vulnerable to its effects: women and girls. Despite the general difficulties and dangers associated with a pandemic, women and girls face additional adversities, from shouldering the brunt of the increasing need for care work to the worldwide increase in domestic violence. The gendered impacts of COVID-19 can be reflected in the lived realities of women around the world. As such, I interviewed one woman to gather her experiences during the pandemic and apply feminist theories to these experiences. My interviewee was a 38-year-old Indo-Trinidadian mother of 2 children. She has a common law partner and is employed as a marketing and communications officer. Despite working full-time, her employer allows her to work from home for 2 out of her 5 working days. On the days that she does not work at home, her mother cares for her children. Let's have a look at a day in the life of our interviewee. Here we can see what a regular day at work looks like for our interviewee, starting at 5:30 a.m. and finishing at 11 p.m. Throughout the day, she has many responsibilities, including making breakfast and dinner, getting the children ready and assisting them with any difficulties throughout the day, homework help, etc. In the evening, she can spend anywhere between 3 to 5 hours doing care work, while her partner only averages around 1 to 2 hours of care work per day. This is what a day working at home during the pandemic looks like for our interviewee. On the days that she works at home, her responsibilities are increased as she must multitask doing her paid work, domestic work, and childcare work. This can be extremely strenuous and distracting, lowering her productivity. This causes her to work overtime to stay on track to meet her deadlines. The sexual division of labor can be defined as the division of tasks and responsibilities between men and women, where women's tasks are significantly undervalued in comparison. These tasks are often defined by gender relations of the 19th century, where women were housewives who stayed at home and cared for children while their husbands went out for work. The interviewee detailed recurrent examples of the sexual division of labor. Despite both her and her partner working full-time jobs, she undertook most of the care work, especially childcare. With the onset of the pandemic, she was hopeful for assistance from her partner. However, this was not the case. She explained that these responsibilities were expected of her by her partner, and he often used his primary breadwinner status as an excuse for participation. Historically, this was the case for female indentured laborers. They were forced, due to the decreasing wages, to forfeit their financial autonomy and independence to become housewives. This was the product of the vision of male indentured laborers, the colonial state, and the church, who wanted to tame female indentured laborers to encourage marriage. This favored the plantation system, as these women were never compensated for peasant farming, all while caring for their children and their households. Today, women like my interviewee face similar challenges. Despite becoming wage earners, their tasks at home have not lessened, nor have they been shared. This is referred to as the second shift, the domestic and childcare obligations after the paid workday. As reflected in the interviewee's experiences, women perform majority of these responsibilities. The working world was not created with women's experiences in mind, as gender roles and norms surrounded the idea of the male breadwinner and his nurturing housewife. Consequently, the working woman must now also care for their children almost entirely on her own. Ultimately, life for these women becomes an overwhelming balancing act. The fact that her partner expected her to shoulder these responsibilities alone further demonstrates the perpetuation of gender roles. While my interviewee was taught at a young age how to perform the tasks required to care for a household and children, her partner was not. This is a direct consequence of the gendering process and sex stereotyping. As such, she is perceived to be better at executing these duties because they are women's work. Thus follows the expectation that she should undertake these responsibilities as it is only natural for women to do so. However, women's households and partners are not the only beneficiaries of women's unpaid care work. The economy also continues to profit from the exploitation of women in the care economy by approximately 11 trillion US dollars. Moreover, nationwide lockdowns during the pandemic have provoked a rise in the demand for care work. This is a result of closures to early childhood centers, daycares, and schools. Therefore, the onus has been placed on the informal childcare sector to manage the many duties performed at these institutions. This is illustrated in my interviewee's arrangement with her mother to watch her children while she is at work. In this instance and many others, women shoulder these burdens due to the force of sex stereotyping. Women are either forced to leave the workplace entirely, or as is the case with our interviewee, multitask the roles of mother, teacher, and worker. According to UN Women, this can constrain a woman's ability to engage in paid work and negatively affects their physical, mental, and emotional. Studies have shown a significant increase in the self-reported levels of depression and anxiety in women during the pandemic. Alonzi et al. Further explained that this is heightened due to the increased domestic responsibilities of women, leading to additional emotional distress. This is reflected in the interviewee's experience, as she cited a decline in her productivity and ability to focus. Her employer has also taken note of her lowered productivity and has made meeting deadlines tedious. The looming threat of unemployment, together with later hours spent meeting these deadlines, are cited as major contributors to her mental and physical decline. All studies cited the importance of social support systems in maintaining good mental health. When asked what measures she took to safeguard her mental health, she stated that while she did not take any specific steps, she vented her frustrations over the phone with her friends and mother, providing evidence in support of these claims. The impact of COVID-19 does not only disrupt women's lives at home, but also in public. During the pandemic, there has been a spike in domestic violence and violence against women. During nationwide lockdowns, many women in abusive relationships have been forced inside with their abusers. Coupled with stress of being at home, financial struggles, and unemployment, many women have been exposed to severe increases in violence. This jeopardizes their physical, mental, and emotional health, as they now must deal with these situations on their own. However, it does not stop at the individual level. To date, 45 women and 2 girls have been killed in Trinidad and Tobago, while 416 have been reported missing. This has made the interviewee fearful for the safety of herself and her children. As a result, she has limited the time she spends in public alone and restricted her children to the yard space unless supervised. While she stated that she was not exposed to domestic violence, she related that her partner's short temper makes her worry. The patriarchal ideal of masculinity is aggressive, strong, emotionally reserved, courageous, and warrior-like, much like his hunter ancestors. These qualities are characteristic of real men. This myth normalizes and perpetuates men's violent behaviors. Within this is a contempt for everything that relates to or is associated with their complements, women. This contempt can turn to hatred, and this hatred leads to violence. The violence exhibited by men reflects the danger of these sex stereotypes. Men direct their stresses on women, as they are representations of the things that would emasculate them, and are thus the manifestations of the things that they hate within themselves. Having acknowledged the impact of the pandemic on women and linking it to feminist theory, we will now discuss the possible solutions to the issues raised. I questioned the interviewee on her recommendations to how the state and society can respond to the issues faced by women during the pandemic. This is especially important as gender blindness in policy making can negatively affect women, as these policies do not benefit them or do not consider their unique circumstances, thus lessening the effectiveness of such policies. The UN Secretary-General called on 146 member states and observers to prioritize preventing and ending gender-based violence in their response plans for COVID-19. However, this requires accessible support services despite lockdown measures. Some recommendations the interviewee gave for the state was to assess the inefficiencies of the services that they currently provide, such as the domestic violence and suicide hotlines, and to reinforce them to meet the growing demands during the pandemic. She also suggested for an expansion of these services, for example, to include a text messaging or SMS hotline for women in situations where they could not speak. She also suggested that the government should publicize the sex offenders list and update it often so that they are known to the public, to which I also agreed, as this would make these individuals known and ensure the safety of the community. Communities provide individuals with the socialization they need to become well-adjusted adults. They can also be an essential tool during the pandemic to ensure the mental, physical, and emotional well-being of their members. Despite being negatively impacted by sex stereotyping and gender roles, the interviewee still felt that they were important for the normal functioning of society. This reiterates the strong psychological hold of patriarchal ideals, having convinced her that roles outlined for her as a woman truly affected her natural capabilities. To address mental health, she suggested that communities needed to destigmatize it, something I, as a psychology student, agreed with. She suggested that communities needed to instead support these individuals rather than shun them. I further suggested that communities should attempt to create online spaces where people can find access to support services to assist them during difficult situations. She further suggested that communities needed to break the silence around violence against women, stating that many abusers, rapists, and kidnappers were known to be dangerous by the community. I agreed, but also reiterated the earlier suggestions to address the violent male ideal in the male upbringing to prevent further normalization of violence. From participating in this assignment, I was able to apply learned feminist concepts to real-life experiences. The effects of the sexual division of labor exhibited in studies and the interviewee's life displayed the multidimensional impact on areas such as health and quality of paid work. These both have ramifications for the lives of women, especially mothers. The economy also continued to benefit of the exploitation of women, normalizing it, despite never acknowledging or compensating it. The role of sex stereotyping and gender roles on the lives of women was woven into every aspect of their lives and continued to disadvantage them. Surprisingly, despite clearly experiencing these hardships, the interviewee was adamant on the maintenance of traditional gender roles, telling of the grip of patriarchy on society's mindset. This was further evidenced by the rampant violence exhibited by men during the pandemic, stemming from behaviors that define their identity as men, the normalization of which continues to lead women like sheep to a slaughterhouse as they pass these off as acceptable male behaviors. Pandemics and disasters such as COVID-19 disproportionately affect women. Therefore, there is need to adequately adjust social, health, and economic systems to ensure the same benefits and protections for the most vulnerable in our society. The sexual division of labor, sex stereotypes, gender roles, and ideals all contribute to the shortcomings of these systems. Hence, both at a state and community level, we must address these issues if we are to provide the necessary security and support for women and girls. This can be achieved by gathering women's experiences, adequately documenting them, and considering these experiences when amending these systems.